First off, I'd like to know how you first envisioned your installation at the MFA exhibition. Where did your concept begin?
I would say the concept for what I was going to show in the museum for thesis started to form at the end, well, maybe at the beginning of my third year, so the beginning of last semester. And really it was just about how do I take my work and the work that I've been making and working on since coming to Western, and then make it into a delivery system that will function in a modestly sized room in a museum with 3 other people. Where when I first came to Western, a lot of my work was very installation heavy. It would be hard to show those installations that were often very dark with like very specific lighting. And it was not going to be feasible to present my work in that manner in a museum setting unless I were to build like a completely separate box in the museum, which is like takes away from the concepts I'm working with anyway. So I just started to really push myself as far as, you know, what is truly needed and necessary for the concepts that I'm working with, and how do I achieve that? And then the rest happened pretty naturally with just like finding the materials I needed or daydreaming on my commute to school and being like, oh, that's how I can do that. So it was very, I don't know. It all came quite naturally.
Yeah. And then you mentioned in your exhibition statement that you use art as a tool for exploring and exploiting false notations of safety. So my question is, what has been the most surprising realization you've had using art as a navigator?
Oh, wow. Well, so I've been doing some of that since I was in my undergrad. So since 2015. But since then, and really like when I was in undergrad and I was exploring those things, I didn't really understand like why I was drawn to like the safety cones and everything else that was like these objects that were supposed to be powerful and do all these things, and they a lot of times fell flat, pun intended, because they're often run over on the side of the road. But I think the most surprising has been when people interact with the work that I make, and if they go further to like read the artist statement or something, but even if they don't, even if they just see the work, they're like, they'll come back to me and be like, I can't look at a safety cone without thinking of you, or I can't like unsee the no hunting purple paint that is arbitrarily marked on trees as I'm driving through Western North Carolina, or just picking up on all the different types of architecture that you would overlook unless you were the type of person that it was meaning to oppress, like the way that benches in parks will have the middle bar or other absurd ways of just making sure that people can't sleep on the benches. You wouldn't really think about that unless you tried to lay down on the bench, and you might not do that unless you are houseless or something. I hate that it exists, but I'm also glad that the work I'm making does help people to think about that more. But it definitely is still surprising to hear. And it doesn't matter how many times I've heard, I can't see a safety cone without thinking of you. Every time I hear it, it's like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's definitely been the most surprising, is just like other people's reactions.
Yeah, you said that was a surprising, like to hear people say that to you. When you first started making art up like until now, what did you hope that your art would offer to people who experienced it? Is it that realization of like, wow, you like opened my mind to like...
Well, I think less of like the mind opening and more of just like questioning these objects that you otherwise would overlook, or not really think twice about, like caution tape or something, or the way certain buildings are built. And I think my whole hope from the beginning of making was to like be able to portray these images and also put I don't know how to say it, like an earthliness or something, like an objectness to these other feelings or sensations that would otherwise be intangible. But finding out how to talk about like the shadow side of the object, or like, the more devious reason for this style of architecture's existence. And being able to draw attention to it to the point where people will question it and be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. This fence could easily be jumped, or like one hurricane comes and it's gone, So I think that from the beginning, it's always been about trying to take the way that I tend to see things and make it available to other people. But also in that process, there was so much change that went on in how I saw the things, that then it just fueled me to want to be able to make art about these things that would pose other people with these questions and these thoughts to be like, oh, cool. I don't know.
Yeah. And then, is there anything else regarding your work in the exhibition that you'd like to share that I haven't asked about?
No, I don't think so. Other than the other thing that I just thought about this, and it ties into what you asked earlier about like how I came to the solution or whatever for what was going to be in the exhibition. And it took shape in sculpture, printmaking, and video. And I think that since the beginning of me working and making as an artist, I've been very reluctant to just tie myself down to one medium. And I feel like a big part of that is because of the concepts that I'm working with being so complex and broad. And also just living in the information age where one medium just isn't going to cut it anymore for getting your point across. So that definitely played a part in figuring out how I was going to display the work in the museum to make it feel all encompassing, because there's also this need/desire to make the work that's up in the museum for your thesis show really encapsulate everything you've done in the 3 years of being in grad school. And that is just impossible. Because I also make at a very rapid pace, and they're never like small things. So there's a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's been a great learning experience for like what's necessary, what's not, and like how do you say what you need to say without just like totally overwhelming the viewer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we go, are there any new projects you're currently working on that you want to share?
I guess it's not really new, but I do run a bookstore, and it's mostly online or a pop-up bookstore. And it's called Seether Bookstore. It's on Instagram as Seether Bookstore. And it's I always say we so that it feels like it's more than just me behind a computer screen, but it is definitely just me behind a computer screen. Well, it's me and everyone who donates the books, right? Because I sell used books. So everyone who's involved, I feel like, is part of making the thing work. So maybe that's why I say we. But Seether sells used books and other zines or printed material to raise money so that books can be bought and shipped to incarcerated LGBTQ people and sex workers. So one thing I am excited about for graduating is like having a little more time to dedicate to that sweet project that I've been doing for like 5 years now. But it's been sort of plateaued through grad school because I just don't have the time to like run a bookstore online right now.
But that's amazing that you're doing that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a sweet thing. And actually, I got a summer research grant through WCU to start a publication as Seether Books called Printed Still Matters. And I've just finally got those, the first publication. It's going to be an annual publication, but I just got the first one printed, and they will be for sale on Seether Bookstore. And it's just a compilation of interviews and work from self-publishing people. And it's all about why the world of self-publishing is so important to communities all around the world. And it really gives a voice and a platform to marginalized voices and can get information out there. And it's a lot easier than people might think. When they hear self-publishing, it's like, oh gosh, that's like, you know, how am I going to do that? And like, how do I do that without Amazon? Because Amazon is a beast of a thing. And it's like, oh, you can self-publish through Amazon. It's like, no, we're not talking that self-publishing. We're talking like the cool kind of self-publishing. Yeah, but I think that's it.